once through,
Cool.
let everybody know there's a couple more that we may join us. But thanks everybody for hanging out, being here today. You're about to hear from Brittany Zeer. She runs a company called Wombcare, and today's session is all about nourishing mothers. Though I gave the preface beforehand, it's not all about, you don't have to be a mother, expecting, or even years after. You're going to talk a little bit about that and get into this. And certainly the tea that is being served up is delicious and nourishing in so many regards for everybody. So yeah, we went slightly off track for timing, but we're going to give Brittany all the time to share all her wisdom that she has with you today. And just same as every session, informal, raise your hand, anything like that. We'll cover off any questions. And yeah, thanks so much for being here and sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here. If you would like, we got a red date, goji, berry, and ginger tea. If you would like, optional, totally to you. Awesome. So great. Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you everyone for being here, and thank you everyone who's online as well. My name is Brittany Zeer, and I am the creator of Blissful Wombcare. And I want to talk a little bit about my story and my journey because it all ties into the essentials of nourishing mothers and what my work is rooted in. So a little bit of backstory. I was a yoga teacher for about 10 years. I've been teaching prenatal yoga since 2014. So that was where my support of pregnancy and mothers really began, was through teaching women in prenatal yoga. And then through the pandemic, I went from teaching yoga full-time to not at all. And I was like, well, what else am I going to do? Because clearly the yoga market is really saturated. And what else can I do that is always going to be needed and always going to be required? And what that came down to was women's health. And particularly at the time, I was geared more towards supporting birth. I had this calling if I wanted to support birth. And so I was going to become a birth doula. At the same time, I had been living with chronic pain through fibromyalgia and chronic migraine for 7.5 years. And so there's a component of that ties into the essentials of nourishing mothers, because I'll talk about the 5 essentials of postpartum care, which are really just the essentials of healing in general. But I'll dive back into that in a moment. Welcome, come on in. So a little bit of my journey. So I got this calling, okay, I'm going to be a birth doula. That's what I wanted to do because of my own personal experience of being in the medical system through living with chronic pain and then seeing other women go through the system. I was wanting to come into birth work more from this place of saviorship because I saw the distortions and the dysfunction within it. So I did a couple doula courses, and in one course was where I was introduced to this book, The First 40 Days. Has anyone here heard of this book? Yeah? One person. Awesome. Great. So I brought this book because this is an incredible, incredible resource. This book is rooted in traditional Chinese medicine and how in traditional Chinese medicine, part of their culture for thousands of years has been a 40-day lying in period for mothers. And it's rooted deeply in their culture on the essentials, basically, of what I will be talking about here. And it was through this and she talks about how there's similarities between different lineages, different cultures, how there's multiple cultures around the world who have been practicing postpartum care rooted in these essentials. So this was, and in reading this book, I was like, okay, there's something that's lacking here. I continued to do a full spectrum doula course, so fertility, birth, and postpartum doula. And through that course, I left certified with more questions than answers on how to support women, especially in birth and postpartum. And this ties into my sister. I was supporting my sister through her pregnancy and birth, and we had only prepared for a physiological birth. There wasn't any preparation for any other option. We were just in that frame of mind. She's going to have a physiological as natural as possible as she could. But it wound up, she had a cesarean. And so to support her postpartum, in my postpartum doula course, there was virtually nothing on how to support anyone after a cesarean, let alone postpartum in general. What I was taught in my postpartum doula course was really, here's 4 breastfeeding positions. And when you're going in, you're doing more of like emotional support and tending to light housework around the house or just whatever the mother needs. And I was like, there's more. There's more that happens during pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and I'm really lacking that. And so in December of 2021, I had a website, I had a brand, I was Blissful Doula Care at the time. Now I'm Blissful Wombcare, and I'll circle back to that as well. And I was just like, there's something that's lacking. I don't feel like I'm in integrity supporting pregnancy, birth, and postpartum because I feel like I'm missing a really big piece. And I'm a pretty spiritual person. I sat in front of my altar one night in December of 2021, crying and calling in a teacher, calling in a community, because that was also what was lacking in my doula courses as well. It was all online, it was self-paced, learn as you go. And they were just like, yeah, just get out there supporting women. And I'm like, what is going on? And so I sat in front of my altar and I cried and I said, I need a teacher, I need a community, I need some more direction because I feel this yearning to support women and mothers, but I don't know how. And the next day I woke up to an ad on my Instagram page from Innate Postpartum Care for their practitioner training. And just this week, I received my certificate after 18 months of being in that program. And yeah, thank you so much. So a little bit about Innate Postpartum Care. My teacher, her name is Rochelle Garcia Saliga, and she's a traditional midwife. She trained traditionally with Mexican midwives and then moved up to the States as well. She was also spiritually adopted into Indigenous way of life, and ceremonial practice was very much a part of her practice and what she offered to women and mothers. And it was through her own pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey that Innate Postpartum Care was birthed. Because she had this vision, because she was a midwife herself and she was surrounded by midwives, that there would be this village that would be there for her once she had her baby. And it was not. And it was not at all. And so she felt so much grief and she felt so much rage. And she's like, why aren't we spend all of this time supporting women through pregnancy and through birth. And then once postpartum hits, once the baby has come, all right, see you later. You're on your own. Women have done this for thousands of years. We used to have the village, but now we don't. But too bad, too sad. Here you go. Figure it out. You'll be good on your own. And she's like, that just does not sit well. So she had this vision. She started to dive deeper into cross-cultural traditions from around the world. And she began to see that there were 5 essentials in all cultures around the world that had postpartum care traditions, which every culture at one point did, but through colonization, we have lost all of that. And through a modern way of life, we have lost all of that. So the 5 essentials of postpartum care are rest, warmth, body care, nourishment, and community support, or community care. And so each culture has those 5 essentials, but how they integrate it and how they support and tend to mothers, especially in the early postpartum time, like the first 40 days, is different based on the land on which they live on. So in Mexico, they're going to have a little bit of a different practice than, say, up in Alaska or say in China or whatever it is that they're utilizing. But it's rooted in those 5 essentials. And so she started to recognize this, she started to see this, and she wanted to create a program. And she went to midwives in her community. She was living in Oregon at the time. And she went to midwives in her community with this idea of, I want to start offering postpartum care for mothers. And out of, I don't know how many midwives she emailed, only one person responded. It was like, that's a great idea. And then that was it. And she's like, how can this be? These are midwives. Like, we're supporting pregnancy, we're supporting birth. Why doesn't anyone want to look at this? And what she came to recognize is that in our modern way of life, we live by these like finite time frames, right? So pregnancy is 9 months, give or take, right? Birth is at most 4 or 5 days, anywhere between a couple hours and at the long range, 4 or 5 days. Postpartum is forever, right? And so here we're thinking, okay, postpartum, when most people think postpartum, also most of us are programmed when we hear postpartum, we think, oh, postpartum depression or some sort of postpartum ailment or something like that. But postpartum is the first 6 weeks after birth, which is also known as the 4th trimester. Postpartum is the first year after birth. Postpartum is 30 years after birth. Postpartum is for life. Because physiologically, once a woman becomes pregnant and she gives birth, whether that is through miscarriage, abortion, stillbirth, live birth, anything of the sort. Her body physiologically is different, and she herself will forever be changed. And it like makes me emotional to just say that, right? Because also what is so under supported is miscarriage, is abortion, is stillbirth. We think about supporting mothers in some context when there is a live baby, but oftentimes women are suffering throughout those other areas without additional support. But what is required, those 5 essentials of postpartum care, are the same as what is required whatever stage of postpartum you're at. It's also what is required for women who are bleeding, who are during their menstrual phase. And it's also what is required just for healing in general. So tying all of this back into my chronic pain journey, it was through this. So the postpartum care course, the Innate Traditions postpartum care course, was 9 months in the container. And the way that the reason why she does it this way, 9 months in the container and then a 9-month kind of case study apprenticeship, is because humans are the only animal really on Earth that have introgestation and exogestation. Introgestation is the 9 months that the baby is gestating in the womb. Exogestation is about the 9 months afterwards. And so when we look at nature, we can see any baby that is born, they're dependent on their mother for food, but they're separate, right? They can walk on their own, they can distance themselves from their mother. They have this separation really from the moment of birth. The mother can go out and hunt and come back and bring food back to the baby, and the baby is going to be okay. But humans have this 9-month exogestation period where the mother and the baby essentially are still one. We call it the mother-baby dyad. And so because the baby is entirely dependent on the mother, the baby can't move away from the mother until it starts crawling. That's why it's about that 9-month exogestation window. Once the baby can start to separate itself from the mother is when that exogestation period generally ends. So the baby requires the mother to regulate its nervous system, to regulate its temperature, to feed it, to change its diaper, to help it go to sleep, all of these things, right? So the Innate Postpartum Care course was 9 months in the course, 9 months out of the course, doing case studies, integration, creating whatever our offerings are going to be. And the course was designed for healthcare practitioners, so anyone who is midwife, doctor, nurse, doula, yoga teacher, massage therapist, traditional Chinese medicine doctor, herbalist, or anyone who's just interested in supporting mothers postpartum is who is invited into this course. So it was that 9-month exogestation that I just completed, which granted me my certificate. And so here we are today. So it's been an 18-month-long journey for me to be here. And so I'm really excited to talk to you guys today to expand a little bit more on those 5 essentials of postpartum care, and also talk to you about some things that you can do at home to nourish yourself. So whether you are a mother or you're not a mother, we all come from a mother, right? So the foundation of society's health is maternal health. And how often are mothers supported and tended to? Not very often, right? Not very often. So mothers are left out literally in the cold to fend for themselves. And so coming back to the 5 essentials of postpartum care, I'm going to first talk about rest. So why is rest essential? Well, if anyone else was to have an injury, a broken bone, a surgery, come down with an illness, sickness of any sort, what is one of the first things that we tell them to do? We tell them to rest. But why don't we give mothers the space to rest? So let's tie this into physiology. So physiologically, as a woman is growing a baby within her womb, she is coming into the most expanded state of her life. She is the most expansive that she will ever be by the end of that pregnancy. Not only is she physically expanding, but she is mentally, emotionally, and spiritually expanding. She's about to cross through a threshold. She's going from maiden, which is independence on her own, kind of this freedom, to all of a sudden now her entire world, her entire life is going to change as she transitions into mother. And I'll talk a little bit more about the rite of passage from maiden to mother once we get to the community care portion of this. But anyway, so a woman is in her most expansive state during pregnancy. And so it's also this hot and this yang state. And once she gives birth, all of a sudden she is empty. The baby is no longer inside, the baby is outside. She has blood loss. She has sometimes injuries and trauma from the birth, whether that is through tearing or episiotomies or any other interventions. Maybe that ends in a cesarean, like it did for my sister, which is a major abdominal surgery. Yet we're sending mothers home 24 hours after they have a major abdominal surgery to go home and tend to your baby, figure it out, without any post-op care that you would get, say, if you had a knee replacement. If you have a knee replacement, you have a hip replacement, you have something like that, they're going to send you for physio. They're going to talk to you about how to do wound care, how to nurture and support yourself. But again, for some reason, we don't do this when it comes to mothers. And I'm going to circle back to talk about why that is as well, why we have forgotten these postpartum care traditions. But I just want to talk about the 5 essentials first. So first one, rest. And when we also look at the physiology of that, so when the womb expands, when the uterus expands towards the end of pregnancy, it's about 3 pounds empty. Without the baby, without the placenta, the womb itself is about 3 pounds. When you're not bleeding, when you're not menstruating, it's about 4 ounces. So just think about the difference in the size of that. Now you have a human growing inside of you. You have all of this pressure on your joints and on your ligaments. And so it takes about 3 to 4 months actually for your ligaments to heal. So when mothers go for their 6-week postpartum checkup, oftentimes they're cleared, okay, good, without really any physical examination or actually talking to the mother about what the last 6 weeks has been like. It's all right, you're fine to go back and have sex, you're fine to go back and exercise, just go and live your life as normal, without this understanding that physiologically, even just the ligaments take 3 to 4 months to heal. What is required for healing? Rest is required for healing. So that's one reason why rest is so important. Also, how many in here are mothers? Okay, so we have a few in here who are mothers. Were you tired postpartum? Were you exhausted? Yeah. Did you feel like you were going to die from exhaustion and from overwhelm? Right? Exactly. Right? That's exactly it. So again, that's another reason why rest is essential. Warmth. So in traditional Chinese medicine, warmth is essential in most, and Ayurveda and most other things as well. Warmth is essential for healing. Warmth helps reduce inflammation. It brings blood flow into the body to support healing. So let's use the example of a cesarean. Okay, so a woman is in the operating room having a cesarean. Not only is she in this cold, bright, sterile environment, whether she's having a cesarean or just a hospital birth, she's in this cold, bright, sterile environment, exposed, goes through this massive undertaking and process, however she births her baby, and is just sent home without any awareness on how important warmth is. So this is why you guys are drinking the red date goji and ginger tea, because, and I'll talk about this a little bit more as well. I also need to keep an eye on time because I can talk for 1,000 years on this. The red date is warming and the ginger is warming. So it's stimulating warmth from the inside out. And I'll circle back to that a little bit more as well. But the womb requires warmth for healing. And if we are not warm, that creates blood stasis. Blood stasis slows down the healing process. So one thing I want to put here as well, one thing that women are told about postpartum to support themselves after having a baby is padsicles, which is a cold pad with some herbs or whatever. You put that on for the pain, for the perineum pain, for any tearing, anything like that. But what cold does, and the RICE method, the rest, ice, compression, and elevation, has actually been debunked by the doctor who coined it for the first place. Yet it takes 17 years for a policy change to happen in hospitals or in education. So many doctors and practitioners are still prescribing ice. But what that does is that constricts blood vessels. So that delays the healing process and creates blood stasis. So we're actually doing things the opposite of what is actually required for healing. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I support warmth when I talk about my offerings and everything. But one thing as well, okay, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. I had to come back. No padsicles. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, right? Because the cold helps the pain. It freezes. What it does is it's freezing the blood vessels. It's freezing the nerves so that you're not feeling the pain. So yes, it can feel good. So an alternative to padsicles would be a sitz bath, which is warm, or a peribottle rinse with warming herbs. Yep. So that's a great option as well. Yoni steaming or vaginal or pelvic floor steaming, if anyone has ever heard of that, is also a really great modality to use postpartum as well to support healing, as long as you don't have a cesarean. If you have had a cesarean or you know someone who has had a cesarean, wait until 6 weeks for the scar to heal before you do yoni steaming. But if you have a vaginal birth, even if you have tearing, that is something that is going to be really supportive. It's sending warmth, it's sending heat, it's sending nourishment, it's sending blood, and it's replenishing all of that was lost. Warmth is also really good for the spleen. Tying back into why I served this tea today, this is really nourishing for the spleen. The spleen produces and distributes blood throughout the body. The spleen is also representative of the heart and the emotional body as well. So I'm going to pause here for a moment and just share a quick little story about a woman who I supported. She had a cesarean. I supported her last year. And while I was in my course, I was supporting her through her pregnancy as well. So I was talking to her a lot about these essentials, and guiding her on how to prepare for that. Yet, unfortunately, no one else in her world knew about this. So they were teaching her all the things that I am unlearning and that I am now teaching other people about. And so she had a cesarean, and they told her within the first week, make sure you're getting out, you're walking lots, get outside, get as much fresh air as you can, and feeding her things like, and this will tie into the nourishment piece as well, but feeding her things like cold foods, cold salads, cold water, smoothies, because those are easy to eat on the go. But when you're eating cold foods, that's really hard on your digestive system. When your body is trying to heal, the digestive system needs warmth. It needs warm, nourishing foods, spices, easily digestible foods, because it takes so much energy to digest food. And if your body is needing to work extra hard to digest cold food, then it's drawing energy away from all of the other healing that is required. So we'll talk a little bit more about warm foods when we get to the nourishment piece as well. So anyways, tying it back to this quick little story, she was going out for walks. She was getting her hair wet. She was eating the cold foods. She was not resting, nothing like this. And so she called me. She's like, Brittany, she was 4 weeks postpartum. She's like, I don't know if I can do this. I think I need to go on anti-anxiety meds. This is too much. Also, her partner was in special forces training in Ottawa. She was living alone. She didn't really have anyone who was there to support her. She was doing all of this on her own. And so I asked her, I said, what are you doing? Talk me through it. Well, I'm going out for a walk at least once a day. She had all of these stairs in her house. She's running up and down the stairs all the time. I'm eating cool. I'm doing all this. I was like, okay, that's the opposite of what I told you to do. And when we look at the spleen, and the spleen is the center of the emotional body and represents the heart, and she is not having warmth and she is not resting, she is going to be depleted. She's going to be depleted. She's going to be anxious. She's going to be exhausted. She's going to be worried. Everything around her is going to feel like it's crumbling. So as soon as I went into her home, I spent 3 days in her home with her, cooking her warm, nourishing foods. I poured all of my offerings into her. And within 3 days, she was a completely new person. She was bonded with her baby. She had trouble bonding with her baby. She was dealing with grief. She was processing trauma from her birth, all of this sort of stuff. With 3 days of me coming in, she was like, I feel like a new person. She went to her therapist. Her therapist was like, what happened? What, like, you are the opposite of who you were. And she's like, Brittany came and saw me. So her therapist called me up. She's like, hey, I need to add you to my resource list. So that's just a short little story on how that really turned things around. And that was when she was at about 2 months postpartum is when I went in for that. Okay, so that's the importance of warmth. Body care. Body care can be many different things. That can be physio, that can be pelvic floor treatments, holistic pelvic care, massage, acupuncture, castor oil packs, yoni steams, herbal baths, gentle yoga, breath work, anything that is tending to the physical body. So again, why is this essential? When we just reflect on everything that we have talked about, the body requires these additional modalities to support it in healing. It's also combining in the warmth and the rest in those aspects as well. Now, nourishment, which is what we're here to talk about. I've been talking about all these other things, but it all ties in. So nourishment is essential because what we eat becomes us. And what we eat as mothers during pregnancy and postpartum is also what shapes our babies as well, right? So I brought this book, Real Food for Pregnancy, because I think that this is just an incredible resource, and really it's just real food for life. Again, the 5 essentials of postpartum care, and what is required for healing in general is all of this. So, and I'll talk about a few things that you can buy in the store here to just provide some deep, dense nourishment into your body, whether you are 3 days or 30 years postpartum, and just if you're trying to heal anything or bring some balance back into your life. Also, who here wants to thrive instead of just survive? Yeah. We all kind of want to thrive instead of just survive, but that's not something that's really modeled to us as well. So, nourishment, and we'll circle back to the nourishment piece as well. But thinking about well-cooked foods, so sauteed greens, slow-cooked meats, high animal fat and protein content, warming spices like ginger, cinnamon, turmeric, rosemary, thyme, those really warming and nourishing herbs and spices. And yeah, slow cooked. No cold foods, no cold drinks, no cold water. And again, this is the same for women who are menstruating as well. This is what I practice myself when I am menstruating. I am taking all of these components of the essentials of postpartum care to support myself so that I am replenishing my blood. I am replenishing my energy, because if I am depleted while I am menstruating, that is going to dictate how my energy is throughout the rest of my cycle as well. So one of my other offerings not associated to this, I have a course called Blissful Cycles where I teach about the practice of cycle awareness. And I might talk about that a little bit later on. But nourishment is essential. Also, most women are starting pregnancy already nutrient depleted. When we look at our modern day and the food that is out there, most of it is nutrient depleted. Not a lot of it is organic. It's heavily processed. It's full of seed oils. They're adding in the synthetic vitamins and minerals, which our bodies have never had to digest before. So our bodies are learning how to digest things in a whole new way that isn't necessarily supportive. All right, so that's nourishment. And I'll talk about a few things that you can get in here that are going to be really simple to just nourish your body wherever you're at, whether you're postpartum or not, because that's kind of what this whole topic is. Okay, so rest, warmth, body care, and nourishment are the 4 pillars, but none of that is possible without community care, right? So community care is the foundation. And so again, the mothers in the room, how easy or hard was it for you to nourish yourself, for you to rest, to tend to your body, to bring warmth into your body? Right? Like if you're at home with your baby or your children all by yourself, they're consuming all of your energy. So that's why most women are depleted. We live in this time now where we have been disconnected from community. We live in these nuclear families. Women are encouraged to go back to work. Women are celebrated for going back to work. So that is also separating the mother-baby dyad as well. My teacher, Rochelle, says, she's like, if we are to heal the world, we need to begin with healing mothers. Because how a baby, I was once a baby, how I bonded with my mother and how I was nourished through my mother dictates how I am today. So there's this 3-generation footprint as well. So each one of us was in our grandmother's womb. Did anyone here know that? You're in your grandmother's womb. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So when your mother was in her mother's womb, she developed all of the eggs that she would produce throughout her life. So how cool is that? And then we look at epigenetics as well, and intergenerational depletion, intergenerational disconnection from all of these. When I told my grandma that I was going to do a postpartum care course, she thought that that was ridiculous because she grew up in the time where everything was medicalized, everything was separate. That's what she was programmed with. So one thing that I'm noticing in my business and in my work right now, and why I'm so excited that each one of you are here to hear this conversation today, is because most people don't see and honor and recognize the importance of nourishing and tending to mothers, because mothers are the soil of humanity and foundational to humanity's health. So when we can honor and support the mothers, whether you are 3 days or 30 years postpartum, we are intergenerationally healing forwards and backwards. So that's pretty cool as well. So community care, essential. We need that in order to do the other 4 pillars of postpartum care. How am I doing for time? Okay, I'm running out on time. So I'm going to pivot now to, okay, I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we have gotten here. So I'm really just going to look at kind of the last 150 years of when modern medicine started to come in and when we basically eradicated midwives. Black granny midwives there were posters around in the early 1900s saying that they were dirty and they were unsanitary, and the only way to have a safe and healthy and effective birth was to birth in a hospital. So in the early 1900s, about 99% of births were at home with midwives. By 1955, I believe it is, I want to say like 90 to 99% were hospital births. Like that's how quickly we turned things around. And you look at what else happened in those timeframes as well. It was the feminist movement. Women were called back to work. We're separated away from the village even more. There was more of this urban living, less of this rural living, more of this industrialization, and all of the like. So I'm not going to talk too much more about that because I could go on a whole tangent about how we have gotten to be where we are. But I lay that little bit of foundation, and it goes thousands of years back. Right? It goes a long ways back, this separation, this disconnection from the mother and from the feminine. And that is, I see and I believe that where we are collectively right now is as a result of the disconnect from mothers, especially. Which is why I say whether you're 3 days or 30 years postpartum, this is applicable to mothers anywhere and healing in general. Oh, I wanted to just circle back to my healing journey as well. I healed chronic pain through integrating these 5 essentials in my own life. So after 7.5 years, yes, thank you. After 7.5 years of daily migraines and fibromyalgia, no more anymore. I healed my gut. I came off of all pharmaceuticals. And that leads me into some of my favorite forms of nourishment. Okay, so my number 1 recommendation, I'm coming over here because I put it in the freezer. Bone broth. Does anyone here make their own bone broth? Yes? Yes, absolutely. Amazing. Okay, so some of the benefits of bone broth. The bone, skin, and connective tissues are rich in collagen, minerals, glycine, and gelatin. So that is supportive and reparative for the connective tissue. It's healing for the gut, and so many other benefits. So I tell people who come into the store all the time, and one of my offerings is making bone broth for people. I truly believe that that is one of the things that supported my healing the most. It repaired my gut after 16 years on birth control and 7.5 years on pharmaceuticals and muscle relaxants and everything to manage chronic pain. Isn't it funny that I only got better once I came off of everything? Right? So bone broth is incredibly nourishing. Ways to use bone broth. You can drink it by the cup. You can make soups with it. You can use it as the base of your soups. You can cook rice in it. And the list goes on and on and on. One of my favorite things, first thing in the morning before I have my coffee, I'll heat up a cup of bone broth. I'll sip on that. That's a nice, warm, nourishing healing opening for my gut before I put anything else into it. Giving my body those minerals, vitamins. It's like a savory electrolyte is what bone broth is. So I'm going to put this back in the freezer. All right, so bone broth. Love, love, love the bone broth. for nourishment. Next up, we have beef liver. Has anyone here taken the beef liver supplements? No? Yeah? Yeah. And how do you feel with it? Yeah? Yeah? Yeah. 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 And that's great because that is one of the primary benefits of beef liver. It's one of the highest natural sources of iron available. And most women are told that they are iron deficient and given an iron supplement. But with the synthetic iron supplements, lots of people develop digestive issues, stomach problems, diarrhea, or constipation of the like. I haven't heard of any side effects from taking beef liver. So not only is beef liver one of the highest sources of iron, it's also really high in choline and folate, which are essential for brain development. So some people are a little cautious around using this during pregnancy. In this book, Real Food for Pregnancy, she vows on using beef liver. And so choline and folate are essential for brain development, for memory function, and of the like. And this is the most natural form of that. It's also called nature's multivitamin. So I've heard of people coming off of all other supplements and vitamins simply just from taking beef liver. What are some other? It's similar. I would say if beef liver isn't available, you could do the beef organs as well, because that's going to hit a few different areas. Yeah, either are good, but beef liver is definitely the most possible, the highest. Okay. Oh, it's also the most easily absorbable. So that source of iron, that heme iron, is the most easily absorbable for your body, which is why people don't generally have any side effects like they do when they're taking the iron supplements. Yeah, it's rich in folate and B12, which are essential for brain development and healthy red blood cells. So tying this back into pregnancy and postpartum, and whether you're breastfeeding or of the like, did anyone here know that pregnant women's brain shrinks by 5% by the end of pregnancy? Anyone here experienced baby brain? Yeah, right. It's literally because, and this is leading into this next thing, it's literally because your baby is siphoning off of your brain to develop their brain. Okay? So what is essential for brain is omega fatty acids. So the tallow workshop would have been incredible because tallow is rich in some of these essential fatty acids. But cod liver oil, and we sell the Rosita cod liver oil, which is the only raw and wild caught, unprocessed or minimally processed cod liver oil on the market. Most other cod liver oils are produced through a heating process, which reduces the vitamins, minerals, and the omega fatty acids in it. So to boost that back up, companies are adding the synthetic versions of that back in. This is the most bioavailable and whole source. When I started integrating animal fats and fatty acids into my diet, I believe that is what healed my brain. I had a concussion. That's what started my chronic pain journey. When I started integrating that in, my life changed. My cognitive function started to come back. My memory started to be improved. I was able to hold a conversation. 2 years ago, I don't know that I would have been able to lead a class like this. So the Rosita cod liver oil comes in capsule form, or we have it in the fridge as well. It's not necessarily the greatest tasting, but it's going to be the most nutrient dense that you have. Okay. And all right, I'm seeing more time here, so I'm just going to start to wrap things up a little bit. All right, we're going to talk about nettle next. Has anyone here used nettle? Angela over here, Malcolm over here. Nettle, 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 nettle. All right. So nettle is one of the most nourishing tonics and herbs that you can take. It has more chlorophyll in it than any other herbs. It's high in vitamins A, C, D, and K. It's high in minerals like calcium, magnesium, potassium, phosphorus, silica, iron. It's antihistamine. It has these gentle cleansing effects. I developed a rash the other day and I started taking nettle. I put nettle in my bath. I did like an herbal tea infusion. I soaked in oats and nettle and calendula, and that just soothed the rash that was on my body. You can drink it in a tea. You can add it into your soups. I've been adding it into my bone broths just for extra vitamins and minerals added into that. And it's also really nourishing and supportive for breast milk and breast milk production as well. All right, so circling back to the tea that I made you, the red date, goji, and ginger tea. So red dates, jujube dates, as they are also known, are very nourishing for the spleen and for blood. It brings warmth into the body, it's boosting circulation, and it's building blood. So after the blood loss of birth, we need to replenish that blood loss. Also, did anyone here know that breast milk is made from the same substrate as blood loss, and the production of, same substrate as blood, and the production of breast milk is equivalent to blood loss. So this is why we need to be bringing more of these blood building herbs and supportive nourishing foods into the body. Again, whether you are 3 days or 30 years postpartum, it's never too late to start to replenish the nutrients in your body. All right. So, and we sell the goji berries and the red dates here as well. I'll just take these out. They're also really high in vitamin A and C, calcium, iron, and really rich in antioxidants. Red dates and goji berries are seen as superfoods in traditional Chinese medicine to promote longevity and youthfulness as well. And in this book, The First 40 Days, there's a recipe in here for a red date and goji tea. I added the ginger because I like the extra depth of flavor that ginger provides. It's also warming, anti-inflammatory, good for the immune system, and of the like. So in this book, where she writes about the recipe for the red date and goji tea, she says every mother should be drinking a cup of this tea every day to nourish their body, mind, and soul. So it's really calming and grounding and regulating for the nervous system. And all of this comes back into that when mothers are depleted, mothers are going to develop, not necessarily, but possibly, if mothers are depleted, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, rage, feeling like they don't have enough to give, and of the like. So, okay. I hammered my way through all of that. I think I got to most of the things that I wanted to talk about. And before I open it up to questions, I just wanted to share with you all. So I've made these beautiful little postcards with my postpartum care offerings on them. So I have a few different packages and you guys can take these home. I have rest, warmth, and body care package. What that is, it's a 4-hour package where I come into your home. It's really great for mothers who are in those first 6 weeks postpartum or who have dysregulated nervous systems, are exhausted, depleted, and they don't have anyone else to come in to support them so that they can go and rest. So I come in and I create a safe, cozy space for mothers to rest. I'll tend to the baby or the children, anything else around the house that needs tending while mom can rest. And then for the warmth and body care, I have different options of castor oil packs. So helping you get set up with a castor oil pack and then leaving you with the supplies so that you can do that on your own. Creating a beautiful herbal, calming, relaxing bath, yoga, meditation, and so much more. So that's part of the rest, warmth, and body care package. The nourishment care package, I have 2 different options for that. One is, again, where I come into the home. I'm going out and picking up all of the ingredients to make so many of these really nutrient-dense, nourishing, hearty meals for moms in their home. So I'm going out and picking up the groceries so she doesn't have to run out at 2 weeks postpartum when she should be at home resting. I'm going out to pick it up, bringing it in, taking over her kitchen, and the smell of the food and the community care that comes in with that is a natural oxytocin boost, which allows the mother to feel supported. And then I leave her freezer stockpiled with 4 to 6 different options that she gets to choose from my menu of like 30 different options. Just this week, I also launched a delivery nourishment care package where I make bone broth, and a soup, and then a nourishing, delicious snack. I make that in my home, and then I deliver it door to door as well. So that's something that I just launched last week. I'm really excited about that. And then my community care package, the rite of passage into motherhood requires social recognition and witnessing for a mother to complete this rite of passage. We expect mothers to stay the same as who they were prior to having a baby. I come in and I see you and recognize that you are not who you once were. I want to hear your birth story. I want to support you in integrating anything that came up through your birth story, through your postpartum journey. And then we do a practice called closing of the bones, which is a cross-cultural tradition. I use a rebozo that comes from Mexico. It was handmade by Indigenous women in Mexico. It's a long shawl and cloth that is wrapped around the body to physically and energetically close up a woman after the expansion of pregnancy and birth. So that's another form of body care as well. And it's this beautiful practice of witnessing mothers wherever they're at. And the closing of the bones can actually be done at any point throughout the postpartum journey. It's beautiful, 6 weeks postpartum, but I've done it on my mom who has had 5 pregnancies, 3 children, and is 30 years postpartum, and I've done it on her. She had a heart attack a couple of years ago, and she had a hysterectomy 16 years ago. And after receiving the first closing of the bones treatment, she said, I feel like my heart is healed, and I feel like I have my womb again. And that was just such a beautiful offering for me to do to my mom as well. And then on the other side, there's a couple other options as well. First 40 days package. So I come for the first 6 weeks, once a week, a virtual package. And I'm also going to be launching a community education series rooted on educating people during pregnancy on how to support postpartum, because most people don't know. And that course is really geared towards the people who are going to be supporting the postpartum mother. The mother is to attend, but her support people are to attend as well, so that that community support is laid before the baby even arrives. So those are my postpartum care offerings. That's what I have to say about the essentials of nourishing mothers. I'll open it up to questions. Yes. Oh, castor oil pack has so many benefits to it. It actually penetrates about 5 inches deep into the body. So it's really great at breaking up scar tissue. It's bringing warmth in. It's anti-inflammatory. It's also really great for detoxification as well. Yeah. And so the castor oil pack, we sell castor oil and castor oil packs here. We're currently out of stock because everyone's loving the castor oil packs right now. Absolutely, you can. Yeah, I make my own castor oil pack at home. How I use it, I take a cotton cloth, I'll douse it in castor oil, I'll put a piece of parchment paper over top of it, put it over, it covers the entire abdomen, but especially the womb space, covers the entire abdomen. Then you put a heat source over top and you just sit and rest for like 40 to 60 minutes is the most ideal time. The parchment paper, yeah, the parchment paper, so the cloth first that has the castor oil pack on, the parchment paper is to just prevent the castor oil from staining anything else that's around, because it will leak through. And then heating pad, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. And then it's the heat that activates it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any other questions?
So you put the parchment paper first?
No, the cloth first that has the castor oil on it. Yeah. And I mean, other at-home castor oil packs will say to use plastic. I don't use plastic because castor oil is drawing toxins out, but if you put heat over plastic, it's going to draw toxins in. So that's why I use parchment paper instead. Yeah. Oh yeah, Blissful Cycles. Yeah. Yeah, Blissful Cycles. I'm hoping to run that sometime this fall. That's a 3-month-long course teaching women about the practice of cycle awareness. So understanding fertility awareness. Most of us have been taught that you're fertile at any point throughout your cycle, which is why we're prescribed birth control. But you're actually only fertile for 5 to 6 days of your cycle. And so there's natural biomarkers for you to track so that you can determine when your fertile window is. So whether you are using fertility awareness to prevent pregnancy or to support conception or just get deeper in tune with your body. I teach about fertility awareness. I teach about the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle and how the 4 phases of the menstrual cycle correlate to the 4 seasons and the 4 seasons and the 4 phases that the moon goes through as well. And so I dive deep into all of that. I also dive deep into why we have forgotten all of these traditions, how we have been disconnected from our womb space, and it's a beautiful community container that's 3 months long. 3 months long. When I ran it before, I ran it over Zoom. And so we gathered on Zoom every 2 weeks. Women shared their stories. They shared about what the practice of cycle awareness taught them and how to work with the energetics throughout your monthly cycle as well, because we ebb and flow. And it's great. I'm happy to share this right now because I teach about cycle awareness. I'm in like my ovulatory phase right now, which is like my peak expression, the time when you want to be giving talks. So thanks, Malcolm. Yeah, I also happen to have my interview here during that time as well. I'm like, this is great. Like my cycle just aligns so that I can be here to show up in my highest and fullest expression. After the ovulatory phase comes the luteal phase, and that's the pull inwards, and the PMS phase, and that can be a little bit clunky as well, but there's lots of potent wisdom to harvest from the different phases as well. Yeah.
How do we know about your plans? We know about that?
Yeah, I have on my website, I have join the waitlist. So you can go onto my website and join the waitlist for that, and when that comes out. It's blissfulwombcare.com. And I have these postcards, and there's my business card on here as well, so that you guys can follow along. And one final thing I'll say, any of these packages make incredible gifts for mothers, right? So I am all about, I want to support mothers. When the mother is supported, babies are supported. Right? So if we can have this cultural shift of tending to mothers, I really feel like there is going to be this intergenerational and collective healing that will occur. So any of these packages are available for anyone who isn't postpartum as well. That's one of my most frequently asked questions. Can someone who isn't postpartum receive your care? Absolutely, you can. Because the 5 essentials for postpartum care are just the essentials for healing in general. I healed my chronic pain. I have supported so many other people in many different ways who aren't postpartum as well. And that's what I'm super passionate about. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, yeah.
I know some of the traditions, like slow down and do some exercise.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So exactly. And so this is also a beautiful practice too, because when women are bleeding, when they're on their periods, when they're menstruating, it's like a mini monthly postpartum. So if you can learn how to tend to yourself during that bleeding window, you're learning to tend to yourself to support yourself later on and in preparation for postpartum as well, by integrating these things in small little bite-sized pieces as well. Yeah. Cool. Anything else? Cool. We're good. Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Great. And you can get any of these things to nourish yourself in the store and come talk to me if there's anything else that you would like. We have countless other things that are going to replenish lost nutrients in the store. Cool.
Oh,
yeah.
That's great.
Great.
Cool. So we'll send out resources afterwards,
Yep.
And we'll post all these videos if you want to review anything again that you saw today or share with a friend as well. So, all right.
Cool.
Excellent. And thanks everybody for being online.
Thank you.